it is now time to talk about Cosmo Canyon Skip. I hope you guys are excited about Cosmo Canyon Skip. Here is the deal with Cosmo Canyon Skip. I always feel like I should just run through it before fully explaining it so that you can see the end result, you know, before you understand why we're doing everything we're doing. So let me just show you. We do some kind of specific movement here real quick, and then we do more specific movement where we kind of move real weirdly, specifically not doing any diagonal movement here. No diagonal movement, or we kill you. No diagonal movement at all. And now in a run, you would also have to worry about learning Big Guard at this point. So what you would do is stop at this beach and do Big Guard, but we'll talk about that in a second. We navigate through here using only cardinal directions, no diagonals, and we don't bump into any walls. No bumping into walls. And then we get into this position, and then up to this position. Is that right? That doesn't look right. Oh, no, that worked. And then we do that, and then we go past Cosmo Canyon. So why do we have to do all that weird movement to drive past? Because if we didn't do all that weird movement, what would happen is the buggy breaks down, and then you're forced into Cosmo Canyon. So that's what prevents you from just driving past Cosmo Canyon, is the buggy breaks down, and now you have to go in. Because if you tried to run up here now, there is a river that you need the buggy to get across. Okay, so what the hell was the deal with all that? So here's what's going on here. Is this value right here is a 4-byte memory address that is your X position on the world map. We need to get exactly onto this spot, onto this number, down to, I believe, down to the ones digit. We need to be exactly on 86106 in order to make this work. The Y coordinate is a little bit less precise. You don't really need to be exact on the Y coordinate, but you do need to be close at least. But your X coordinate for this skip to work has to be exactly 86106. And so, if you do that, and then you come up here to about this spot, and then you go one more tap to the left, and then one more tap up. Now when you exit the buggy, that, I don't know the scientific explanation, but getting out of the buggy just now triggered something fucky, so now when we get back in the buggy, we can just drive through. And that's how it works. You have to be exactly in that X position, and then in a small Y window, so that you can move 90 more units left, and 90 more units up, and then get out and back in. That triggers basically what it does is it seems to make it so that until you get back off the triangles that initiate the buggy breakdown, the buggy won't break down. So you can just drive through them and leave. But if you drive back on them, then your buggy if you drive back on them, then your buggy breaks down. But just like for this. Yeah, all right, see you later, Magic. But just for this time that you're on these triangles, it gets it so that it's already, I think it's that it's already triggered, but it tried to trigger the buggy breakdown script on cloud when you got out, so it didn't do anything, and now you're on the triangle and the script is already triggered, so you can just drive over it. You know, it's something like that is what's happening, and that's why you can do it. So let's now get into how you do it. So here you are in the buggy. How it works is that the way that we need to get into an exact X position is this right here is the X coordinate of your buggy right now, and every time that you move straight left or straight right, you move 90 units, 90, map units per frame. So if I'm holding left here, or if I'm holding right here, every time we advance a frame, it's going to go up by 90. So the last 3 is going to go up to 371 here, and then it's going to go up to 461, right? 90 map units exactly. That's very, very controllable. As long as we only do... this is why we can't do diagonals, is because we're trying to control our movement exactly by only moving 90 units at a time. If you go diagonally, it moves this weird amount, you know, because of math and shit. It starts moving, you know, different amounts that are not 90. Thanks, Pythagoras. Yes. What we need to do is we need to get our buggy aligned on, like, a grid, essentially, that is a multiple of 90 units away from where we need to be. And what just so happens to be exactly that is right here. So, if we zoom way in on this, all right, it's time for a big zoom. Do you see these little pixels of sand right here? Just these few pixels of sand right here? That's what I look for. If you spawn from the gold saucer and you drove directly downward, your only input on the controller was down on the D-pad, then you'll slide down the corner here 1 frame at a time until you are exactly in this position. And here's the deal: is let's give you some math real quick. 86,106 mod 90, 66. So once again, you drive straight down, and then you can baby this 1 frame at a time. There it is. 118, 956. Mod 90, 66. So what that means is if you are moving in units of 90, if you are moving left and right in units of, or in 90 units at a time, these are aligned on the same grid. You know what I mean? And so that's why diagonal movement fucks everything up, is because right now we've just achieved a very, very easy to set up spot where we are now a perfect multiple of 90 units away from where we need to be. And as long as we don't move diagonally or brush up on any walls accidentally, we can get into position. Let's say each of the squares on this graph paper are 90 units, right? It's 90 units wide and 90 units tall, right? So what that means is if your buggy was sitting on one of the points of the grid and you were to tap left or right, you would move 90 units and you would land on another point of the grid. Yeah? And if you moved again, 90 points on the grid. If you moved up, 90 points. And you stay aligned with the grid as long as you aren't moving diagonally. Because if you move diagonally, then, you know, the buggy speed is 90, and so the 90 would land you, like, right here if you went diagonally. You see how that messes it up? So now, if you tried to go right, you would land, like, right here. Now you're off, now you're off the grid, and it sucks. Yeah? So the whole idea of Cosmo Canyon Skip is that somewhere up here is exactly where we need to be, right? Somewhere up here is exactly where we need to be, and somewhere over here is that beach setup spot, right? And then there's a bunch of junk in between, there's like a bunch of junk here, and so we need to drive the buggy, exactly only in straight lines in order to stay on the grid and aligned with it the entire way until we get there. Yeah? Yeah. Sorry about the focus. I don't know what the deal is with that. So let's kind of show the whole thing now that we basically fully understand what's happening. The way that you get into the setup position is to go directly down and only down. One thing to remember is that we're gonna be buggy skipping after the setup, but right now we've got 140 free fractions, and when we get onto like some of these, like the tumbly sand right here, that doesn't even pass fractions. So you can get all the way down, remember, pressing only down, and then tap down until you're right in position, just like that. That's the position. And then, look at that, we still have fractions to spare. So you don't have to buggy skip on the way down to the setup point. All right? So now, from here, you can go left, and at this point, feel free to start buggy skipping. It does not mess up your position, because it's the position of the buggy, right? So you can get out of the buggy and move around all you want, and that's fine. It's the position of the buggy that matters. All right, all right. So we come up here, come left, and up, and left. And at this point, you would want to stop and learn Big Guard. I suppose we'll talk about that right now. So you can use this beach. You can also use the beach that you set up on in order to get a fight with beach plugs. So right here, we need to learn Big Guard. All right, so this encounter on the beach, it might be beach plugs, it might be 4 beach plugs, it might be an egg. If you get an egg, just run away and force another encounter. We'll actually talk about a little trick with that, though, if that happens. But for now, we'll just show what you do. Just all you got to do is manipulate one of these guys and Molotov the other 2. Use the manipulated one to Big Guard the party, and then Molotov it. And that's all we got to do there, because we still have both enemy skills on Cloud, and so we just learned Big Guard. And that is a hugely, hugely important enemy skill that is required for the run to work. Whoa, Future Dash here. So there's one thing that I want to talk about with beach plugs, which is that they're very slow. And so you want to be holding time while Kate has a manipulate lined up. I briefly talked about this with the laser fight, but it's especially true with beach plugs, where if Kate's manipulate misses, then you want to be able to get as many manipulate attempts in before their next turn, because their turns can be kind of long, and any amount of turn that they get is going to waste you time, and so it's just important. Like I got Kate Sith's turn queued up here for the manip, and then I'm going to hold time with Tifa until it goes off. That way, if it misses like it did, we can hit it. Then I can try the manip again, and I'm holding time with Cloud now. And there you go. We got a second attempt in before the enemy was able to get a turn. All right, now I want to really show this off. So I'm gonna have the beach plug bite itself. So here, during the beach plug's turn, I just queued up a manip on it, and it didn't work. So one way, and this is going to become really important in the Materia Keeper fight, you're probably going to hear me say all the same stuff again, but basically you imagine an imaginary ATB bar above the beach plug's head, right? And when its turn was going off, it was full because its turn was going off, and that's when I queued up the manip with Kate Sith, and then I held time. So now they're both completely empty, because while Kate Sith's manip attempt went off, the beach plug's ATB was not increasing because I'm holding time. So now they both have empty ATB. So I'm gonna release time, just defend with Cloud, pop over, do a manip attempt, and you see Kate Sith got his ability to do a second manip attempt before the beach plug got another turn. But that might not have happened if I didn't hold time. So basically, you get the idea, where when the enemy has its turn, you know that its ATB must be full, and so if you're holding time as its turn finishes, you know that you've held its ATB bar empty. So now with Kate Sith's bar empty as well, we can do a defend just to make it easier to queue up another manip attempt as quickly as possible, and there you go. So this is just a really basic weight tricking example. With beach plugs specifically, they're so slow that you can get 3 or maybe even more, I'm not sure, manip attempts off before they get a turn, if you properly weight trick this way. But like with Death Claws, you should be able to at least get 2 manipulates attempts in per turn. And then this whole subject of weight tricking, in order to do this, where you keep the enemy's ATB bar empty until the relevant character, in this case Kate Sith's ATB bar, is also empty, so that then they can race their ATB full, because we know Kate Sith is faster, so he ends up getting 2 turns every 1 beach plug turn, right? Or in this case, could be even 3 or 4, because the beach plugs are so slow. That whole concept is called weight tricking, and is going to be talked about much more thoroughly later. But in this example, there you go. That's just important to talk about right now. Now, let's just say that we got an egg right there. Just a little tip for you is, out of a battle, your fractions are negative 140. So you should park the buggy kind of close to the beach when you go for it, because if you get egged, what you want to do is, instead of having to run up and down the beach and expend these 140 fractions, if you exit a vehicle, it overwrites it with negative 30. So be careful not to accidentally diagonal move the buggy at this point when you do this, but you can just run up, get in, get out. Now your fractions are negative 30, and you just got rid of like 4 seconds of running by doing that. So yeah, that's just a little trick. If you need to get another world map fight really quickly, just get in the vehicle and get out. And that sets your fractions to something that'll get you a battle more quickly. All right, so now, continuing with Cosmo Canyon Skip. This is kind of the toughest part to navigate. What I do is I sort of, you can kind of see these like seams of the triangles. There's this one right here. I usually drive up to that one and go right from there, all the way until about here. You can kind of see the seams like this. I kind of go up, right, up, something like that. Just be careful. Go down a little bit so you don't, nudge that thing on the way. Okay. And then that's all there is to it. As long as you didn't do any diagonal movement in the buggy, just get into position here. So when I say get into position, do you see like a vertical line right here of from where this point is? There's this point right here, and you can especially see it when you're moving. There's this point of the cliff here, and as you're moving, especially when you're moving, you can especially see these 2 lines of these triangles. And what you want to do is you come left, and you get into exactly this position. I sort of look. There is a line that you can see in the texture kind of here, but also you can just imagine it coming out of the tip of this triangle, and that basically comes up and lines up with the second tire. Yeah. So what the easy way to think of it is, remember, this isn't pixel perfect because it's 90 map units. So you can pretty easily tell that this is not correct. This is too far. But that's just right, And then one more and your buggy breaks down, so be careful. So yeah, it's left until right there, So that's the first part, and it doesn't matter where you are vertically here necessarily. You're going to be anywhere around here vertically, and it's just this invisible line up from the tip here, and it's going to line up with your second tire. So, exactly that spot, that's where it's at. Now, the next part is the vertical position, which is a little tougher to explain. I kind of go up until you see how the tip of the buggy is flashing like this? That's kind of what I look for. That's what I think means you did good. And so from this part, you do exactly 1 frame movement left, and then 1 frame movement up, and then you get out, get back in, and then you can go. So 1 frame movement left, 1 frame up, get out, get back in, and then you can go. And that's it. This part, if you're just learning this, you're probably very worried about it. Save the game. Once you get the buggy to this position, right? It's in this position. And so once you're here, you can go ahead and just pop out of the buggy and save your game if you need to. And then if your buggy breaks down, soft reset, try again. Not that big of a deal. So you can spend 15 seconds to save your game and make it so that your run doesn't die if you want. I would recommend it. So, I would recommend it until you're extremely confident with it. Now, one thing that increased my confidence a lot with this trick, though, is remember during the Chocobo, before the Chocobo race, I was practicing my single frame inputs, warming them up, you know? This is exactly why I do it there, is so that we get to this part, and I'm all warmed up on my single frame inputs, you know? We go left into this position, and then we go up. I look at the front of the buggy. You see the front of the buggy? Front of the buggy is oh, I should point out with this mouse. Front of the buggy is blinking. Dino is saying something about the left, about this tire. So maybe that's helpful to you. I don't see what he's talking about. The tip works for me. Just the tip. Just the tip's enough for me. Alright, so then, left, up, get out and back in. You have to get out and back in, and then go. There you go. Alright, friends, there is another thing to talk about. Okay? Are you ready for, hopefully, that concludes the main lesson of Cosmo Canyon Skip. However, is me, Future Dash, again. Alright, so we gotta talk about something crazy that comes up when you are practicing the skip. So, in a run, you will always, after getting into position, get into a battle at some point in order to learn Big Guard, right? We gotta talk about something that might come up when you're just practicing, though. Because if you're just practicing, you're probably gonna get into position right there, and then you're just gonna blow right past all the Big Guard stuff, and just go straight on to the Cosmo Canyon Skip part. So let's fast forward and do that right now. Alright, so here we are coming up on Cosmo Canyon Skip. So after doing the setup, I never got into a battle or anything like that. And now getting into a battle or soft resetting and like reloading your file actually causes the same thing that I'm going to talk about here. So right now I have not gotten into a battle or anything, meaning we are currently in a state that would only exist in practice, really. Unless you were to learn Big Guard and then drive back into the Coral Prison and then back out to reset yourself on the buggy on the world map, and then you went straight here, you know, maybe this will come up in that case. And so maybe it's good to pay attention in case that happens as well. But I'm going to focus more on the idea that you might be practicing. Here's the deal. When we get into this position here, and when we get into this vertical position, the left and right position, the first position, not affected. But this position looks slightly different. Do you remember when I earlier in the tutorial, when I first did this, I was like, let's just show the skip before I explain it. And at that point, I blew past the beach. Then I got to this point and I said, that doesn't look right. And then I did it and it worked, right? The reason is because if you haven't caused the world map to reload via a battle or resetting, the setup on this part looks different. So now on the regular version of the skip, which we're doing right here, it looks very similar. And so you might not even notice because it looks pretty similar. But let's just look at this right here. And see, the thing that I'm kind of looking at is the front of the buggy is lined up with the curve of the cliff, but then the front of it is blinking. But now, if you see the left side of the front, that's 1 pixel lower, is also blinking. On this version of the setup where we haven't done the battle, so this is the one that you would likely not see in a run, there are 2 pixels blinking. And observe, if we do the rest of the setup, it works. Now, watch this though. Remember I saved. I saved right in front of Cosmo Canyon. So we're going to load that file that I just saved on. And then we do the same thing. We get into the horizontal position. And then we get up into this position. Look at that. Look how slightly different it looks. So actually, now that I'm looking at it, there's actually a lot of blinking on like the right side that's not happening. But I just look at the front, you know, it's lined up with the cliff. And you see there's only 1 pixel on the lower row of the front that's blinking. And the top part of it is longer. So here they are side by side. And you can see just how similar they are. But the fact that they are just a little different. And so, once again, I cannot stress this enough. This is the version you'll see in runs because it is how the world map loads after a battle or after a soft reset or something like that. But when you're practicing and you just blow past the beach, it won't look like this. You have to either stop at the beach and do a mock battle, you know? You can just get into, or well, you can stop anywhere and just get into a battle, run away from it, get back into the buggy, boom, you'll have the correct version of the setup. Or you can make a save in front of Cosmo Canyon or wherever you want, and then every time that you know, after doing the beach setup, and then every time that you load the file, it's going to be correct. So that's very important. It's especially important when we talk about the backup. So just to show you, though, that this is indeed a working setup. There you go. We did it. Okay. So speaking of the backup, it's time to talk about the backup. All right, so this is another Kuma special, and how it works, how the backup works, it's very simple. Let's say you're on Cosmo Canyon skip time. So you start going down, and the beach is here, and the spot that you're supposed to set up is right here, remember. However, let's say, whoops, I went past it. Shit, I went past it. Now, you could, in order to save this, you could come back up. Now you're risking a battle, though, but you could drive back in here, and then buffer right and run to run back out. Boom, this puts you back on the world map as a... to just try again. This is just like the first time. Boom, you can get into position now and you can go. However, that is very slow. So the Kuma special is if you... Whoops, I overshot it. If you just continue to press only down, you can go further down and get into this position. So what I look at for this one is that on our right of the buggy, on the back of it, where those like pink things are, I don't know if they're thrusters or what, on the right side of it, you see that like bright stripe of sand. That's what I look for this version of the setup. So this spot also works. That's what the backup is that this spot also works for the beach setup. The one very important caveat to it right away, there's 2 caveats to it. The first is when we get to Cosmo Canyon, the setup looks different, so watch the whole thing. And then also right now, from the first spot, you just go straight left to get over the river, and then you go straight down. But if you took this setup, if you were to go straight left from here, you'll bump and screw it up. So if you got this setup, you have to go up and then left in order to avoid brushing on the beach and screwing up the setup. But now, let's just fast forward on over to Cosmo Canyon. Alright, so here we are at Cosmo Canyon after having done the backup beach setup and having gotten a battle, or like done a reset to reload the world map or something. So this is what you will see in a run after because you've gotten into a battle to learn Big Guard. So it's the same horizontal position to get into, but as you go up, you have to be careful not to get tricked, because this spot right here looks a lot like the setup on the non-backup. But you need to nudge up another time, and you get into this spot where you see that there is kind of what I'm looking at is still we're lined up with the top curve of the cliff, but there's only 2 pixels in front of the star that are blinking. Like the front of the buggy has this like star on it, you know? And you can only see like 3 yellow pixels of it, you know, 2 of them horizontally and then the one below the bright one. And just above that, there's the blinky. That's what I look for as far as the backup setup goes. You need to be even more careful about it, though, because there is a spot further back that looks really similar to this. So you need to also make sure that you're lined up with the front of the cliff here. And if you go 1 left, 1 up, out in, you can go. That is your valid spot. All right, so now if you just blew past the beach without getting into a battle, it's going to look, as you will find out on this one, it looks wildly different. So if you get up into position here, you kind of get into this spot where like the right side and the bottom are blinky and the top of it is just flat and unmoving. That's what it would look like in the practice scenario. And you'll see here also left, up, and you can go. So that's the spot that works only in practice. So don't practice and get really used to that visual cue, and then in a run it doesn't look like that and it fucks you up. So that's the backup. That's what the visual cue looks like when you had to do the backup beach spot. And just be really careful about practicing and how it can look different. And yeah, here's these 2 side by side, and you can see how wildly different these 2 are. Is that good for Cosmo Canyon, Skip? I think it is. So once you've skipped Cosmo Canyon, you are now free to move diagonally because we are done with it, you know, once you're past it. And so, yep, you can, but continue the buggy skip so you don't get into your encounters, you know, and then, yeah, you can do as much diagonal as you want, and we are straight off to Nibelheim. Yes. Nibelheim.